What's up, everybody? It's your boy Phil Porto, photographer, videographer, and educator. And today on the channel, I'm really pumped to have Shotty. Shotty is a dope photographer. So a lot of times, when I have somebody on this portion of the YouTube series, they kind of like have something that I can just say, oh, they specialize at this. But when it comes to Shotty, I've been following his work since like the whole COVID craziness started, and got introduced to him by Derek and a whole bunch of those Fuji guys, Miles and whatnot. And what I love about you is that I feel like you cover a plethora of different things. Like you can kill it in the studio, you can kill it in the street, you can get some street photography, and it's like you have your own unique kind of feel to your images across the platform. And so if you guys don't know who Shotty is, he is a Fuji photographer, and I am biased when it comes to Fuji photographers. So follow his work. I'm gonna let you kind of give the viewers just a little bit of a rundown of kind of like how you got into what you do and kind of like what the process was.
So I'm a photographer from the Bronx, down with Fujifilm as a creator in their creator program. And you want to know how I got into that, or like photography?
Yeah. So how you got into photography? Like I preach Fuji all the time, so they kind of know that process, but your story.
So interestingly enough, I went to school for music, and I always wanted to be a musician. So I went to school, studied music business, and was producing and coming out with projects. Was gaining some success in that, and then for one of my birthdays, my friends got me a digital camera. It was a point and shoot Kodak. I think it was like 1 megapixel or something like that. But that was the first camera that I owned, and I would take pictures with that, and I just kind of grew this fascination with photography, with shooting people in particular, and seeing the expressions and how they tell stories, and just being able to take a photo and then go back home and analyze that photo and analyze the expression and really see a story. That's something that I was drawn to. And then it just grew from there. At that time, I had just finished school, and I was like, I know the undertaking of photography, and I knew how much I didn't know. That's important. It's like you have to know what you don't know. But I was not going back to school. I was not paying. When I was in school full time. I had a full time job because I was paying for school as I went. I graduated with no debt pretty much, and trying to do music on top of that. So I was like not ready to do that again. And basically, I just went to Barnes and Noble every day, 8 hours a day during one of the craziest summers. Everybody's graduated out of school and doing their thing, and I just spent every day in Barnes and Noble reading every book, every magazine on photography.
That's awesome.
And then boom, you know what I'm saying? I was like,
So what I love about these is I learned so much about the photographer's journey as well. Like I can read up, a little bit, but being able to face sit down. And what's crazy is this is the first time I'm hearing that background portion of your story. And it's ridiculous how close our stories are, because I went to school for music. Okay. I went to school for music business. I went to school for production and music management. And while I was there, like the school that I was going to, they were supposed to have like this full-on program, and they dropped the ball and didn't tell me till my junior year.
You went to Full Sail?
No. So I was gonna go to Full Sail, but then I wound up going to this private school down south because they were like, hey, we have this music, production program that's coming out, music business, and you can also get not just a certification, but a full-on college degree. And I was just like, all right, best of both worlds, So I went to that school, end of my sophomore year, getting ready to go to junior year and take all the classes I need for my major. And they're like, so we got bad news. It's not gonna roll out till after you graduate. And I just spent 2 years at this school. And I was like, well, then I'm done, I'm out. And they were like, well, what if we let you do whatever you want? Like, as long as it falls under media. And so I took some video classes, a little bit of like photo lighting and stuff like that. And so I kind of knew how to use a camera, but I never really like focused on it because I was there for music business, So that was my focus. I did music right outside of college. And then while I was doing music, I met my wife, and she was like, that's cute, that you're making a living on the road, but like, that's good for you. I'm not wired to stay home 10 months out of the year while you travel. You know, like I'm not building that kind of family. And so I was like, all right, do I hang out with these sweaty dudes on the road, you know, making money, or do I wake up to a hot wife, you know? And that's when I quit the band. So yeah, so it was like, all right, I'm done. And that's when I started, you know, messing around more with photo and video. So very similar journey, except for the fact that I didn't graduate debt free. So congratulations, like student loans still calling me, not paying you. But so yeah, so you know, you spend all this time educating yourself.
Well, thank God for the debt free, because, you know, like you, I went to school for music, concentration in music business. And when I graduated, there was no more music business. Like Napster was taking over. Like the music business had totally changed. And if you know anything about academia, it's like it takes 10 years to get something in a book.
Yeah.
But the music industry was moving faster, faster, and faster, and faster, and things were changing every 3 months. Yeah. So I was like, you spend all this money on equipment, and you know, you wait for your big break. And I remember when I bought my first camera, I think I had paid for it in like 3 weeks with work. So I was just like, oh, I'm never going back to doing this other thing. I'm gonna just stay over here.
That's awesome. So proof that you don't need to spend buku bucks to become a photographer, you know? No. But there's also that other side of it where it's like, just because you have access to YouTube does not make you a dope photographer. There has to go that hand in hand, putting in the work, polishing what you've done. And so like, I know when I look, you know, like I look at my work when I first started and I'm like, yo, that was rough. You know, like whenever I speak at a workshop, that's the first thing I do. I show my old work to tell people like, this is what you know of me, but this is where I came from. You know, like it was a rough journey at first. Like my images were not what they are now. You know, so
you sleep, like I tell people like, don't sleep on YouTube University, because that's where I got a lot of my education. But when I was in Barnes & Noble every day, reading these magazines, reading these books, I was also looking at photos all day, every day. For maybe like a year and a half, all I did was look at photos, and I would put photos that I really liked and try to figure out why I like this photo, try to figure out what about the lighting, what about the posing. So being a student of any profession that you want to be in, you know, you really got to study what's out there, and just, you know, you could just jump in and take your own pictures, but you want to see why something works, why something doesn't work. And you want to see, you know, just all the spectrum of different things that are out existing. And then if you want to go with that and do the same thing, cool. And if you see that and you want to do something different, cool. But you got to kind of like know your competition.
Exactly. And that's what I love. I love the constant pursuit of educating yourself, not just in the lane that you think you want to go in, but kind of looking at multiple lanes and being able to like pull from that, you know, which is kind of what this whole series is. He's like, you focus, you know, a lot in the studio and like portraiture, and that's stuff that I'm, you know, in the last few years have really gotten into. But like my bread and butter for the last like 10 years has been weddings, you know? And like, as I kind of step back from that and move into this, like I could just show up and be like, I'm gonna do what I do. Or I could look at those that are killing it or those that inspire me and be like, all right, teach me, you know, like show me something. So you taught yourself, you're on this road for photography, you know, years later, you're shooting Fuji. What do you think like defines you as a photographer? Like, where do you get your inspiration? What is your goal as a photographer?
I think when I started, it's good that you asked that question, because that's something I feel like as creators or as photographers, we don't necessarily pinpoint. And it's good to look at your work and try to understand why you do what you do. And when I started in photography, you know, it was 10 years ago, and there weren't a lot of Black faces in fashion. So you know, I love hip hop, like, you know, that's the music that I was gonna do. So in the beginning, my main thing was to take rappers, take R&B artists, take Black musicians, and shoot them in, you know, like the high-end fashion type of looks, and shoot them in the more glamorous looks and stuff that you would see in the fashion magazines. So I was driven by that because I really loved fashion portraiture. You know, the industry, I could go without that, but like the images that I would see with Stephen Klein and all the dope stuff that he was shooting, I'm looking at old images, Richard Avedon and some of those guys that was like really, really doing fashion stuff, I thought was dope, and I just wanted to do that with black people.
That's awesome. So I love that you had a style, but you also had a reasoning behind why you were doing it. And so, you know, what I've noticed is there's a huge trend that has kind of come. You know, like I grew up here in the city as well, you know, grew up as a Puerto Rican in New York City, even though I look white as can be. And like, you know, that was what shaped me, you know, hip hop culture, Latin culture. And so like that was part of who I am, you know, and so embracing that was never a big thing for me, you know, but now, you know, with everything that happened in 2020 and moving forward, there seems to be a, you know, massive thing where it's like now companies, now photographers want to be inclusive, but I feel like that's all great and whatever, but with what you're actually doing, your heart should also be there as well. You know, like you can't just say, I am a white, Hispanic, Asian photographer and I have black people in my collection, you know, but like I have black people in my collection because I have black people in my heart, you know, like I actually like connect with them, I vibe with them, I want them to get that showcase that they deserve, you know. So how important is it as a black photographer to like have people in the community who don't just embrace that now because it's the norm, but that they actually have that same kind of like feeling and heart behind it?
Right. So I feel like I wouldn't want to force anyone to have anything in their heart.
Yeah.
What I would want to do is prevent them from getting the gigs that, I think those type of gigs should go to people, first to black photographers, where there's not enough black people that are shooting, that are doing makeup, that are doing hair, that are producing, that are, behind the scenes making executive decisions and whatnot. So I think that that's a big part of it. What I do now is like I kind of, if I see a photographer and their page is featuring a lot of black faces, I just scroll back to before June 2020 and I see like what it really is, and it's like shoot whatever you shoot. Like we can't really tell people what to shoot, what not to shoot, why to shoot it. Even if they're, especially if they're, shooting beautiful images. But, it's one thing to kind of pretend that you care about a community and then totally exploit it and then move on to the next thing than to, maybe something did click in your mind and you're seeing life different based on, what happened during the pandemic and what has been, there was an explosion of awareness during the pandemic, but like, let's keep it real, like these things have been happening, so.
And you say it a lot kinder than I do, because even in the wedding industry, I tell photographers all the time, like, if you're doing it for a paycheck, stop. Like, it's not fair to your couple. It's not fair to the industry. It's not fair to the client. And so, like, that's why I'm like, if your heart's not really in it and you're seeing them as a paycheck instead of as a voice that should be heard, instead of as a face that should be recognized, a face that should be seen, then I'm like, personally, I'm like, just stop, because I personally, if it's between me and someone who's going to shoot this couple and they're going to only see them as a paycheck and not really care who they are, they could give a crap less who they are. I would rather make less and shoot that couple than let that photographer shoot that couple, because like they matter, they matter to me, more than my bank account matters to me. They matter to me.
You gotta love what you do, regardless of what you do. I think the world would be a better place if everybody did what they love. If people that worked for customer service loved to do customer service and nobody else did customer service, you know what I mean? Like that energy, when you call a company and you got an issue, you have somebody gentle that loves to help you. They're gonna give you a good feeling. They're gonna help you solve your problem. You're gonna go to wherever you go next with a good energy, good attitude, and you're gonna give that to somebody else, you know what I mean? So I'm a big champion for do what you love to do. It doesn't always have to be glamorous. You don't have to be a superstar, mega model, and all of that. Just find what it is that you like to do or something you're generally good at, and then just do that.
That's awesome. All right, so when our model gets here, we're gonna showcase you shooting, and I'm gonna kind of learn. So for anyone that's listening, as well as myself, like, what are some tips to like your approach to a portrait session, a studio session that I could be looking out for? Because when I send you my images, I don't want you to be like, yo, these are trash. Like, I want you to be like, yo, I can see, you know, that you implemented these things. So what are a few pointers that you would give?
Well, to start, we're gonna be learning together because I don't really have a solid approach. I kind of just like figure it out as I go, and every person is different, every situation is different. I try to go into shoots with a plan, an idea of the type of images that I want to create, but I always say my plan is a plan B. So really what I want to do is get in there, see something that's inspiring or kind of bring a collective creative energy together, see what the subject is trying to do, maybe if there's anybody else, if there's a creative director, a makeup artist, like, so how we feeling, like what do we want to do? And then if that, you know, doesn't really come together how it's supposed to, we got this, if all else fails, thing right here. But generally, I like to just get in there and let the magic happen, you know what I'm saying?
That's awesome. And so for you guys to know, this is a friend of mine who lives in the city now that's going to be our model. I've never shot her, so there's no experience there. For like the last 3 years, we've talked about like shooting together and it just never worked out. And so Shotty doesn't even know her name yet, you know, like it's Selena, you know, so Selena's coming through. So there's no experience from either one of us. So it's all on the fly. Which sometimes can be even more of a challenge, you know? So I love that, being able to step up to the plate. So what is your favorite thing about shooting portraiture? Like when you're in a shoot, like what's the one thing that you really like delight in and look for, that you would tell people like, find this to kind of find your groove?
Right. So when I'm shooting I love portraiture and I love to do it for clients and I love to do it personally. When I'm shooting with clients, I'm kind of more susceptible to, you know, whatever they choose for their specific purposes. And I understand that when I'm shooting my own portraits, I typically like to pick those moments. We talking about like selecting photos. I like those moments that are kind of uncommon and awkward in a way, like different facial expressions, stuff that you won't see that'll make you ask questions like, what's going on in this person's head? Or, you know, I'm fascinated by that, and I really like angles and shapes that I'm realizing in my composition with stuff. But if I'm just getting like a close-up portrait, you know, I want the expression to be something that will make you wonder. You know what I mean? It's cool to look pretty and have that type of stuff, you know, and everybody wants to have a good photo of themselves like that, but that's what drives me, is those kind of moments where you're like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
And that's one thing I love is like, I see a lot of portraiture that's one or the other, you know, like different ideas, compositions, some far out, you know, like I see that a lot in your work. And then the other side is, oh, it's just portraiture of their face and features. So you look at people's Instagrams and it's one or the other. And so I love going to yours and be like, oh crap, that was creative as crap, you know, like,
I got everything on my
yeah. And so I love that, because like, that's going to be a challenge for me, because I'm from the wedding industry, a composition junkie, where everything, like, I love composition, but it's either, you know, here in the corner and then all over the place, or like dead center. Like I love symmetry, you know, but sometimes symmetry doesn't spark for creativity in the studio, you know, so that's one thing I'm gonna be kind of like a hawkeye watching you do.
I love symmetry too, and I'm like you know, I like lines and multiples, and it's hard for me to, like, it makes me uncomfortable to break symmetry, which is why sometimes I intentionally do it in photography, because that makes it more interesting. Symmetry in photography can be cool, but for the most part, it's like how, you know, it's how you do it. And as far as my page and all the different types of content, like I was always told, you need to shoot one thing and be really, really good at that. And that's just never how I've operated. Growing up, I never wanted to be anything specific. I just wanted to be the best at whatever I was doing. So I was doing sports, and then I was the best at that. And then I was doing music, and I was really good at that. And, you know, doing photography, I was working as a salesman at some point. I was really good at sales. So it's like having the freedom to do whatever I want to do, knowing I'm gonna put all my energy into it. And I'm like, I don't have to have one particular style, you know what I'm saying?
And I love that. Two things that you
Especially
said.
if I'm getting checks, you know what I'm saying? Nah.
It's all about the money. So one thing you said was like, I know that like not doing symmetry makes me uncomfortable, and that's why I do it. Like, I think that's huge. Like, that's the quote of the interview for me so far, is like, as photographers, like, we can play it safe, or we can push that envelope, you know, and do something different. You know, like when I think of, you know, the music that I fell in love with at first, you know, it was artists that were pushing the mold. You know, the first time I heard Busta on a Tribe album, you know, and like, this dude's not using the slow flow that everybody else is using. He's a little off the handles, a little crazy in the music video. Like, I fell in love with Busta for the longevity of his career, you know? So like, being able to step out of that comfort zone as a photographer is huge. And then you talked about, you know, how good you were at music. So is there anywhere that people can still find Shotty as a musician?
Yeah, so you had to Google John Shotti, and there was one project I did. It's called A Prince in Harlem,
Okay.
and it was a mashup. This is when like mashups were popular, and it's basically Cam Dipset vocals over Prince samples that I chopped and reflipped and made original beats from.
That's awesome.
That was featured in Billboard magazine twice, and MTV.com and BET.com and all of those places. And it did really well, despite the fact that at that time, nobody was touching Prince. It was like he was suing everybody that used his music. So a lot of websites didn't want to take, you know, the mixtape website. We dating ourselves. Like, this is like back in the days, you had to like go to different mixtape sites to get mixtapes. So it was one website that bought it, but I was on Fordham Road. I saw it bootlegged on Fordham Road. People from Germany were sending me the pictures of the mixtape. Like, so it was all over the world. So, you know, that's something that is evidence in the world of my production and stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm gonna Google that tonight.
Yeah. I might have some CDs. Actually, I'll give you a copy.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So for people that are watching, we're gonna hop into the shoot, and you guys will see him in action, see us in action. Then I'm going to send him my images and have him send me a video back to let me know what I did good, what I did wrong. Hopefully there's some good. So give these people that are watching, and thank you guys for watching, give them a place that they can follow you, support you.
Yeah, so you guys could check me out on Instagram. It's ShottiNYC. I imagine it'll be here somewhere. It'll be over there. ShottiNYC. My website is shotti.nyc, and everything is pretty much ShottiNYC. And shout out to Phil Porto for having me on this pod. It's not a podcast.
Yeah, it's a YouTube tutorial, but it's like a video podcast.
Shout out for having me on here. You know what I'm saying? I really appreciate you reaching out and bringing me on, man. Yeah.
So I love the work, so I'm looking forward to collabing with you. And yeah, you guys enjoy, because like I said, if you haven't followed him, his work is inspiring, and that's the whole reason we're doing this series. I hope to inspire you guys by you guys watching, and then follow him, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments.
So I'm looking at the photos from our shoot, and Phil sent me his selections, and I'm checking them out. And so far I can see, just in the selection of the photos, I think it was done well. In a photo shoot like this, where we're shooting movement and we have a dancer, I think it's very important to capture the movement in a, you know, smooth and elegant way where you can see tension and it's subtle in the movements. It doesn't look too chaotic. As I'm looking at the first picture, Phil's edit, you know, you can see the hair you can see that the hair is kind of like flowing down, and you see the arm you could tell that there was movement and it was being captured in this photo. So I think that that's pretty dope. Just looking through the rest of them, I'm on the second edit. Again, you see the movement, and you really encapsulated that moment in time, which is, you know, the perfect thing to do when you're shooting movement, you're shooting dancers or anything like that, sports, even, you know, somebody dunking the ball. It's, you know, you want to catch that like decisive moment where you can feel the energy from before and you can feel the energy after, and those are coming through in these images. One thing that I would point out in the retouching, you have to be very subtle and have a light hand, because the point of retouching is to kind of fix anything without calling attention to it. So I'm looking at the floor in the first edit, it's a black and white, and I can kind of see on the left side where there was some cloning done. Some of the patterns on the floor don't exactly match up, and that might have been a case where it's drawing more attention than it would have been had you just left it as it was. I'm not sure what was there. I haven't seen the original shot. So just that, be mindful of what you're, in portraiture especially, you have to be mindful of what you're taking out of the image, what you're putting in, because you may, let's say, be going to remove something on the face that's kind of noticeable, and then you do something to it that makes it extremely noticeable. So you always want to pay attention to that. Overall, I think you did a really good job. I hope you picked up some things during the shoot. I know I did, and hope to shoot with you again soon. Thanks.